Linda Watanabe McPherson. I'm a novelist and a teacher here at Book Passage and independently. And I teach fiction, creative nonfiction, and I worked with Patricia. A book launch is a party for the author to celebrate the introduction of their book to the general public. It's just like as if a baby were born. It's a huge celebration where all the friends of the author, their fans, their family get together, and certainly the general public as well, to celebrate the birth of a new book. And in some cases, as in the case of a debut novel, a new voice, a new literary voice.
Yeah, it smells good. Wow, that's nice. There's
It's very strawberry, isn't it?
yes, and then we got the sweet honey wine made from
Join me in a super warm welcome for this very talented writer and her debut novel, hopefully the first of many to come. I'll be looking for the mini-series too. Patricia Bracewell.
Why Emma? Why did you write about an 11th century queen? There were so many other queens you could have possibly written about. Why Emma? And I'm going to throw that question back at you in this form. How many of the people in this room knew who Emma of Normandy was before you heard the buzz about this book, or before you were pigeonholed by me or grabbed by me by the lapels and shaken and told about Emma of Normandy? How many of you knew who that woman was? 3. Okay. Well, I was with the rest of you. I had never heard of Emma of Normandy until it was over 12 years ago, almost 15, I think, when I bumped into her, a mention of her on the internet, and it was a website that I was never able to go back to again. I never found it again. It was like this miraculous thing that happened. I found this woman mentioned, and it said, oh, she was the wife of 2 kings of England. She was the daughter of the Duke of Normandy. She was the sister of the Duke of Normandy. She was the mother of 2 different kings of England. And I thought, who the heck is this? And why have I not heard of her before? Emma. I've never heard of. There's so many queens of England, but Emma wasn't one that I was familiar with. So I started to do a little research, and the more I researched about Emma and discovered what she lived through and experienced, I thought, she must have had a really big impact on the court that she was a part of in those years. And I bet she'd make a really good character for a book. And so I started doing a little bit more research. And the reason that I thought she was significant and that I thought she was a really strong person, one was that she was exiled from England twice. And twice she returned to England and flourished. Something happened in the years after the Tudors, and Emma was sort of lost. People, to common knowledge, people didn't know anymore. Well, they didn't go look back any further than 1066 to the history of England. They were really caught up with the Normans and the Plantagenets and that crowd and the Tudors, and they didn't look any farther back. And so Emma sort of fell down into the footnotes of history, except for the historians who would know her. The medievalists were aware of who Emma was, and they were still writing books about her, and we have those periodically appearing once in a while. And so what I wanted to do when I discovered Emma was to bring her back into the consciousness, if not of the world, at least of those people who were sort of interested in English history and who wanted to hear or read a really good story. And so that's what I decided to do. And I made that decision in 2005. I know that because I wrote about it in my journal, and I just happened to be going over that journal the other day when I was preparing this talk, and there it was, written in black and white. I want to write a book about Emma. Amazing. I must have had some forethought at the time, I don't know. But I didn't start writing for another 2 years, because I spent those 2 years researching, reading journals, reading books, reading volumes of Anglo-Saxon history and books about Emma, Regina, and books about Ethelred and the other people of the time. And finally, in early 2007, actually in January, I sat down and wrote the first chapter of the book. At least the first chapter as it appeared at that time. And quite frankly, the first chapter that is in the book now was part of that original manuscript, even as it reads now. And I wrote for 2 years, and about June of 2009, I was just about finishing the third draft of the book. Linda had read draft number 2. And in spite of her marriage vows, he could not be certain of her allegiance until she bore him a son, and perhaps not even then. She understood this. But Ethelred mistrusted and feared his counselors and even his own sons. Must every ruler keep himself so separate from those around him, even those whom he should be able to trust? Or was there something in Ethelred's very being that set him apart? How many enemies he must have. And because she was bound to him body and soul, her fate wrapped within his, they were her enemies too, for all the years of her life.
What year did she die?
She died in 1051.
So just before the invasion.
1066 was the invasion.
So in what way is she or her children related to what happens in 66?
She's extremely related to what happens in 1066. She was the great aunt of William the Conqueror. And the reason he had a claim to the throne was through Emma. And everyone would have known that. But the other thing that happened, and this is kind of telling, if you know anything about English history, you know that Emma's children spent a lot of time in Normandy. And they became very close to their Norman cousins. And that's why Edward the Confessor offered the crown to William when he was visiting. He was in England in 1051. I'm sorry, I said she died in 1051. I think it was actually 1052. He was in England in 1051, and the historians like to think that he went there to see Emma, that was one of the things he did when he was in England that year. Anyone else? Christine?
So I'm curious about when it's based on history. So this woman obviously existed, but it's called historical fiction. So where and how do you decide that you're sticking with the facts, and where and how do you decide that you're making up the story and you're fictionalizing it?
A really good question. Would anyone like to answer that? For me, the history, and I used this analogy on the radio the other day, in case anyone heard it, you'll hear it again now. The history is like a tree, a barren tree with just limbs. And the story is the leaves on the tree. So you fill in all that empty space with leaves, and that's your story.
And this is... You've got an Emma too, right? Isn't your daughter Emma? I know you. I should have written, I know you love Emma. loved your talk. It was just great.
Yeah? You did okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was fascinating. Now I can go home and read it. Yay.
I'll have you autograph this for Robin, and then I'll give it to Robin as a
Oh, how lovely.
This is so exciting.
My objection was no. I just had that. Because I know they might have to. See, this is what we're going to be doing. I'm so excited.
And there's one famous one in Naples, and everybody
I don't know what I'm going to talk about.
there.
Tomorrow we're at Diesel Books in Rockridge, and on Thursday we're going to do an event at Oakland Hills Tennis Club that's going to be, the books will be sponsored by a great good place for books, a Montclair, California bookstore that I want to help support. They're really a wonderful group there. And then next week I go to Poisoned Pen Books in Arizona, in Scottsdale. And after that, I go to an event down in San Diego, and a tea that is going to be put on. It's a special ticketed event. And after that, we go up to Los Angeles to Vroman's, and that will be the final event in Pasadena.
Well, I was lucky enough to read some of the early manuscripts because she was in an advanced writing workshop that I teach. And I have to say that even in its earliest form, or the form that I saw it in, it was pretty darn good. Now, I've read the book twice, completely through in finished manuscript. Most recently I read it in the published novel, and I have to say I will read it again. It's a great book.
The actual writing of the first 3 drafts took 2 years, and then I spent another probably 6 months revising the 3rd draft, and then we sent it out to the editor. So that was just the writing. The day I got the idea, I made the decision I was going to write the book in November of 2005, and now here it is, 2013. So it was about 7 years, a little more than 7 years. I am getting close to the end of the 2nd book. However, the events that I've imagined and intuited as probably happened between the beginning of the book and the end of it have taken me longer to cover than I thought, and so I originally thought it would end in 10-13, but I'm thinking it's going to end now in 10-12. And so I'm getting close to that ending. I just haven't figured out what it's going to be yet.
It's a trick, you know. It's like you read this book and it's not only you can't wait for it, you have to read the next book. Talk about a cliffhanger. It's an absolute must. I can't say that I was not totally satisfied by the book, because I was. It was a completely satisfying experience. So much so that I want to read more. It's like wanting that second cookie.